recognize Katie and Candace here. The work they have done with the Tread of Pioneers has been phenomenal. They have both been here for a fairly long tenure, and in that time they have really expanded the Tread's programming. They have reached out in more ways than you can imagine within the community, including pioneering the Mineral Springs Protection Committee. So our mineral springs downtown have not previously been protected against development or anything else. So just a huge round of applause for Katie. I want to talk a little bit about All Arts Week. We launched All Arts Week last year as a way to bring a spotlight to arts and culture in Northwest Colorado. A lot of you I've seen from a lot of our different events. We have so much happening here, from symphony to opera to theater. It's pretty phenomenal, and when you put it together in 1 week and you look at, without us even doing anything, you've got 3 to 4 events almost every single night. This is a jewel within rural communities, and I hope we can all recognize it. For the rest of the thing happening down at the Boathouse this afternoon, we've got an hour of jazz in Wild Horse Cinema and Arts tonight from 6 to 7. Then at 7 o'clock, we have Neon Nostalgia. The Steamboat Symphony Orchestra is performing free at the base of the ski area. Bring your 80s bracelets, because it's going to be a party. And then tomorrow is or Saturday, we have artist studio tours. You can find that on our app at allartsweek.com. You can actually go in and see the artists in their studios, learn how they create what they create. And then on Sunday is our big finale. We have blues legend Otis Taylor playing for free at the base of the ski area. We'll have a roller skating rink, kids activities, dance performances. We have Farah Tolno, who will teach African dance workshop. And then we have a DJ who's doing an opera rave music mashup. So for those late night partiers of you, come hang out with us, roller skate and dance. Today's talk really is about women in the arts. Women have been instrumental to our art scene in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. If you think about the pillars of our community, we have agriculture, we have mining, we have outdoor recreation, and the fourth one that most people forget about is arts and culture. Arts and culture came to Steamboat through Perry Mansfield in 1915, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. But if you think about that, recreational skiing came in 1913. 2 years later, you have arts and culture, and the two of them have grown up together, and they've both expanded together. And so the goal of this talk is to shine a light on the women pioneers who have brought these organizations to life, and then what it means to our community. I am open to questions. Just know I will get sidetracked, and it'll take me a minute to get back to where I am if we do have questions. And then we'll do questions at the end as well. Last night I was doing a little bit of research, right, on how many women or what percentage of women work in nonprofits. Across the country, about 75% of the nonprofit workforce is made up of women, which is pretty significant. When you get into corporations with budgets of over 50 million, only 17% have female CEOs. In our community of Steamboat Springs, I would say about 90% of our nonprofits are run by women, which is pretty phenomenal. And the reason for that, we believe, is that nonprofit work has always been a space where women have had access. So unlike corporate jobs, doctors, lawyers, and things like that in the early 1900s, this was a space where women could create change. And they did that phenomenally. If you look at leaders in the community, from Frances Perkins, who was FDR's Secretary of Labor and the first woman to serve as a cabinet secretary, to Dorothy Height, who's a civil rights and women activist, to Jane Addams, who ran the very first settlement house in the entire country, which also ties into Steamboat Springs because Charlotte Perry and Portia Mansfield, who started our first organization, lived at Hull House for a period and taught there. So it's amazing, this network of women that have come out and really impacted the world, not just our small communities. One of the reasons women do so well in nonprofits is it takes things like empathy, collaboration, and emotional intelligence. And I'm not making that up, I'm pulling that offline from other research. But these are skills we do really well as women, and so that's why I believe in this community we have such a strong force of women. And I've also been really lucky. We've been doing some recordings of these women leaders this week at Wild Horse Cinema and Arts for a video that'll talk about the arts. But I've learned so much about why they started what they started. So we're going to start with the original grand dames, Charlotte Perry and Portia Mansfield. Who all know Charlotte and Portia, like 70% of this room? Mm-hmm. I love it. So I'm going to keep it brief because we all know how phenomenal they are. But for those who don't know, Charlotte Perry and Portia Mansfield were two Smith College graduates. Charlotte Perry's family was in Denver, Portia's was in Chicago, New York, and she traveled around quite a bit teaching. But the two of them, for a time, lived in Chicago. They lived at Jane Addams' settlement house, the Hull House. And in that space, they learned that you could have this beautiful mix of art and the outdoors. So at the Hull House, a lot of what they did was help immigrant women get connected into the culture of the United States. And they did that through arts classes, they did that through theater, through dance, through basketball, through religious teachings. We know that Charlotte at that time taught Bible studies, which was very unconventional. Charlotte was pretty unconventional. Her Bible to her was nature. That's where she prayed and believed in God. So it's kind of ironic she taught small children the Bible, but she did it through acting, right? She put her own spin on it, and instead of just preaching the Bible, she taught the children how to act pieces out of the Bible so that they could take on those roles and learn empathy and compassion. Charlotte Perry actually went on to become a leader in children's theater. She pioneered techniques in children's theater that allowed them to move like animals. So if you're embodying someone who has a snake-like personality, how can you subtly convey that through the way that your body moves, kind of like a snake? She was phenomenal. Portia Mansfield, in her own right, really changed the world in a lot of different ways. She pioneered something called, oh my gosh, I'm going to totally blank on the dance movement.
Describe it.
Tell me.
Basics.
Correctives
of movement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with middle-aged brain on this one. So correctives, it was a form of dance that helped improve posture, improve your core strength, and it would help women either lose weight if they were overweight or gain a healthy weight if they were underweight. They pioneered this at Perry Mansfield as a way to help their dancers, right? But it turned into so much more. They brought in teachers from around the country, showed them this, and all of a sudden they're teaching these corrective dancers, which were the precursor to physical therapy. So when you go into physical therapy and they're teaching you stretching exercises and strengthening exercises, you can thank Portia Mansfield. They also legitimized the Western riding rating system. How many equestrians do we have in the room today? Joe, there we are. Shout out to Joe, this is for you. So when Charlotte and Portia started camp, they had an equestrian program. This is one of the unique parts of Perry Mansfield is you have dance, you have theater, you have the wilderness, and you have an equestrian program. And all the disciplines had to take each other discipline to learn from them. In that equestrian program, they taught English riding, which was on a postage stamp saddle, right? Very tall posture, there's nothing to hold on to. And they frowned on Western riding, which had these big horns in the front, as being kind of cheating. It's not proper riding, right? But when Portia came out here and went on a bear hunt and had to ride a horse down a steep rocky hill, she realized, oh, actually there's a real good reason. And also, Joe, you know, right? You gotta tie a rope around that for when you're working on a ranch, right? Am I out of line, or am I with you?
Oh, right on. I took that, I went to Perry Mansfield.
Yeah.
It was a really perfect balanced discipline, because you don't just sit on a horse. Well, not and stay at Perry Mansfield.
Yeah.
Not ride a good horse.
Yeah.
There's 100%, every molecule of your body is with a horse. And
Yeah.
it was a phenomenal discipline, a little surprising at first to me, but it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and so what they did was they created a rating system for Western riding that really legitimized that style of riding throughout the country. There was an English rating system. There was nothing for the Western side. So Elizabeth Shannon and Portia Mansfield worked together. They piloted that, and now that's nationally known. So pretty phenomenal the work they did. One of the other things they did was they started the Colorado Symposium for the Arts. So they would invite teachers from rural communities to Steamboat Springs, and they would talk about the ways that arts impact rural communities and how you can implement that. The seeds from that went on to create the National Endowment of the Arts, right? So if you think about how much that then supports rural communities, that was also pioneered right here in Steamboat Springs. So that's a little bit about our Charlotte and Portia. They were known as the ladies, and they were the first two. And since then, there's been these series of ladies throughout our community, and we'll talk about them today, that have really changed and shaped the direction that the arts have gone. Perry Mansfield is still, it's the longest continually operating performing arts camp in the country. It really served a national audience, bringing people in from all over the country and around the world. To balance that out, Eleanor Bliss, who in 1924 was a student at Perry Mansfield, she also realized she came there, her aunt was this famous dancer, and said, I want you to take over my dance business. And Eleanor said, I really don't love dance, but I really, really like riding horses. And I really, really like this instructor, Marjorie Perry, who was just this free-spirited woman who also loved poetry. There was this love of everything. It was so encompassing in every person who was out there to love every part of your body, your art side, your outdoor side, your athletic side, right? And so you have Eleanor Bliss. She works for the Explorers Club. So is anyone familiar with the Explorers Club in New York? Got one couple head, of course you know Edith. Couple, yes, Carolyn. So the Explorers Club was a man-run organization that housed the greatest explorers from around the world. These were the people who were going to the greatest depths of the ocean. They were climbing the highest mountains. They were on the edge of everything adventure. They had never let a woman into the organization until World War II, when the men said, I really don't want to be a part of that, because the politics around having to work with all of these people from all of these different countries in wartime could be really tricky. And so Eleanor Bliss was brought in. She was the first secretary at the Explorers Club. She worked there for a number of years, and she was phenomenal in her position because she had empathy, emotional intelligence, and collaboration, right, ladies? Yes. And so she had this outdoor adventure spirit. When she came out here, a very quiet woman, we call her the quiet pioneer, Carol Finoff, was very active in how do we bring the arts to a local level, right? And how do we get the local community involved in arts, whereas Perry Mansfield's really this national beacon of the arts. And so they started the Steamboat Springs Arts Council with a number of other people in our community. And then the Arts Council needed a home. And this is where Eleanor really shined. She was really the face and the speaker that went out and was able to rally up enough money and convince the city to lease them the Depot Center Arts Building, which is still there today, our train depot, for $1 a year for 30 years. Right? I know, right? Yes, please. And I believe they still pay that today. I believe that's still negotiated on the same lease today, right? But at the time, the building had been in total disrepair. It was filled with mice, it was filled with spiders. Carolyn knows other things that probably have been in there. I remember the sewer pipes were going right out into the river. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done. Eleanor rallied the community around that. They cleaned it up, and in 1972, they opened the Depot Arts Center. And so that today is the home not of our Steamboat Springs Arts Council. Those kind of went by the wayside several years back when the Colorado Office of Economic Development decided the new vision was creative districts. So a creative district is a program of the Colorado Office of Economic Development that showcases the economic impact of arts in small towns and large towns. I think we have about 50 creative districts across the state of Colorado right now. Steamboat Springs became one under the leadership of Kim Keith, who is currently the executive director of Steamboat Creates, and we'll get to her in a little bit. But Eleanor Bliss started this legacy with Carol Finoff, and I have to say a little bit about Carol because I love the introverts, because I am also an introvert, right? She was known for her love of the arts. She was, and I'm gonna pull this up so I don't forget any of her beautiful skills. She loved classical music, she played the recorder, painted, and was an expert at knitting and needlepoint. She also found a way to spin yarn from her Newfoundland dog's shed fur, right? And she was known for being in meetings with Carolyn knitting and listening quietly, needlepoint, and listening very quietly until she had something to say. And when she opened her mouth, everybody listened, because she had a way of bringing all of the thoughts together in a cohesive manner and having a solution. And I learned that from Carolyn Lustred, who is our archivist and historian out at Perry Mansfield, but also in so much of our community. So now we have these two women that have continued a legacy and brought local arts to our community. Now out at Perry Mansfield, Charlotte Perry and Portia Mansfield can only live so long. They've both passed since, right? But who's gonna carry that torch on? They have touched thousands of people and inspired thousands of people. But today, and for the last, gosh, many years, there are two other women that have taken up that torch, that have carried that camp. That's Noelle Hefty and Carolyn Lustred. Carolyn is with us in the front here. She is one of the biggest theater explorers, and we just had the pleasure of interviewing her for an Origin of the Arts project that we're working on. But she goes every year and she sits in on the theater performances and she watches these students come alive. She watches them transform. And in that process, she also is transformed, right? Because she can see this whole journey of story come to life. And one of the stories that Carolyn tells that I always make her tell again because I love it so much is she asks these kids, you know, what does it mean to you to be out here? And they'll, come up with, oh, the dance instructors are, on Broadway, or this person does that, and that's so exciting. But there was one little boy, Billy, with his big eyes, and I'm gonna get this right because I've just heard the story. And he was very, very quiet in the corner of the room, and Carolyn said, well, Billy, what does it mean to you to be out here? And he said, after he was kind of gulping and swallowing and like, oh my gosh, I have to speak, he said, I've never seen the dark before. So think about the impact of what this place does for young people coming in from big cities that have never had a nature experience. They've never seen stars or double rainbows, things that we often take for granted having lived out here for as long as we do. So we have Carolyn to really thank for moving the whole theater program forward, letting that thrive, but also being the one to pick up all these papers that at one time they had, was it an executive director who was just going through tossing things? A volunteer. They had a lot of paperwork as they transitioned into new ownership into the 501c3 nonprofit that it is today. Who was going, we don't need this paper, we don't need that paper, we don't need this. And then finally took a lunch break, which gave Carolyn the opportunity to pick up all the papers and start the archives in Perry Mansfield. So it is to her that we have this history, not just of the articles, but also of notebooks that were written by Marjorie Perry, of poems that were written by her, of stories and cards that were sent to Charlotte and Portia. It's really pretty phenomenal. So a huge thank you to you, Carolyn, for keeping up that tradition. Yes. And then we have Noelle Hefty. And so it's really interesting in these interviews as we've been doing them, Carolyn talks about the arts being the soul of our community. When I talked to Noelle, and they're very good friends, right? Noelle talked about the heart, arts being the heart. So they are the heart and soul. Noelle Hefty started Steamboat Dance Theater. This is just about as old as the Depot Arts Center. It was founded in the first year, I believe, right? So it's over 50 years now? Yeah, about 50 years old is our Steamboat Dance Theater. That today is run by a young, phenomenal woman named Lori Biaggi, and they are really expanding their programming out. They have this really innovative programming that includes dancing for athletes, because we know that athletes who incorporate dance into their workout and strength have more flexibility, tend to perform better. So she's pioneering that program in our community. They are doing movement classes for people over 50, people like me who need a little more stretching, a little more strength, and a little bit gentler workout if your knees are as bad as my knees. And so this tradition that started with Noelle Hefty is now continuing to grow and bloom in our community. Noelle is also the biggest supporter of dance and dance scholarships at Perry Mansfield. Every year she makes sure that kids who would otherwise not be able to afford to come here have the opportunity to come and learn from these world-class performers in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and it changes lives every year, right? She said, our goal, her and her husband Terry, if we can change one life, we'll have made a big enough difference. They have changed hundreds of lives, right? So we have that phenomenal legacy, and I refer to Noelle and Carolyn as the ladies of our time, because they are really pioneering and making sure that the arts legacy moves on to that next generation. Now we had, interestingly enough, we have Charlotte and Portia. They both have sisters named Marjorie, one with a G, one with a J. Both love poetry. Marjorie Sweat, which is Portia's sister, went on to become a famous poet. And I think it's worth reading one of her poems, just so that you get a sense of how the environment that they're in really shapes the arts and shapes all of who we are. So this one's called Winter Wife. The white hills smoke with snow, and it is well for you, who make so poor a lover, who give my hands such little tasks to do. For were the doorstep bare and the path not drifted over, my heart would need no cover. I should go and never care, fling out my arms and run, glad in the wakening sun, wild in the singing air, race with my blowing hair, but the weight of winter is on the door, and the snow has driven me near to you. It might be well if you'd love me more, and tell me I am dear to you, although it's early to understand. For how is there any knowing the road I will be going when a free wind is blowing over the open land? So you think of how many people read that and how much that then carries on, like these little seeds in the air that people pick up and carry them with them. So that's a little bit of like our back then. We also have some other phenomenal organizations in this community started by women, and one of them is the Steamboat Symphony Orchestra. So when I talk about neon nostalgia, you can thank Mary Beth Norris. Mary Beth Norris is a flutist, and she started out teaching flute classes to children in the community. And she was called the Closet Flutist by Marie Carmichael, who was the one who asked her to play in the Episcopal Church. The Steamboat String Orchestra was established in 1991, and Mary Beth was the music director. So when it first started, it was a group of local people coming together to play music. And you'll find that a lot of why the arts spring up here is that people who love the arts come here, and then they want more of it, and they want their friends to come here and share in it. And so Mary Beth started the seed of, let's get together, create music, have performances. Today that has grown into a full symphony. And I'm not sure how many people realize that having a symphony in a community art like the size of Steamboat Springs is incredibly rare. And we have a first-class symphony. If you all can make it out tonight to the base of the ski area, I highly recommend it. Because they are also shifting the way that they are operating, right? Typically you think of symphony being in a facility like Strings Music Pavilion. It's a lot more formal, right? There's a certain decorum that goes with it. But they're bringing it out to bring in that next generation of youth to understand and love classical music. So that's a pioneer. Mary Beth Norris is also one of the kindest people I know. She is, how many people know Mary Beth in this room? Right? So quite a few of you. You know how generous she is, how giving she is. And she to this day is like, oh, you have this program for arts? I would love to teach flute classes for free. Just let me know what you need. So these are the hearts and the spirit of the women that are shaping our community even today. I also started looking up, okay, what other organizations have been founded by women? Emerald City Opera, how many are familiar with that, for that is now Opera Steamboat? A couple of you, right? That was started by Carrie Rustoy. And I had never heard her name until she signed up for this interview this week, and I was like, oh my gosh, finally I get to learn what her story is. She was an opera singer, and she sang professionally for a young part of her life until she came to Steamboat Springs for a season to be a ski bum with her girlfriends. At that time she met her husband, she got married, and she decided to stay here. She was offered an opportunity to sing in Europe that she turned down to be with her husband in Steamboat Springs. But that wasn't enough to just be here and ski. She loved the opera and thought, well, how can I bring that here to the place that I'm living? So she started bringing out her friends who were from the Metropolitan Opera, of all places, and said, let's do a performance out here. Her first performance was the Magic Flute. And she talks about the highs and lows of that first performance, right? Of one, how do you find the funding? Initially, she had gone to Nancy Kramer over at Steamboat Creates and said, I want to do this opera this year. And Nancy Kramer said, whoa, no way. You're going to have to wait a year. There is no way we can raise the money. We don't have the infrastructure for it. Let's make sure we do it right if we're going to do it. So they did wait a year. They were able to bring it together. If anyone aware of how much it costs to put an opera together? I mean, you're looking at about $70,000 per performance, okay? And that includes your venue fees, all of your actors, your travel, your costuming. Opera is one of those disciplines that brings together many other disciplines into one. So you typically have dancers, you have actors, you have singers, you have a symphony accompanying it, you have sets that have to be built. And so every year, she said, for 15 years, she pulled off this miracle of bringing world-class performers to Steamboat Springs to create opera at the level that you'd be getting in New York or around the world. After 15 years, she finally said, you know what, I've done that enough, it's time to move on. Over the years, it transitioned from Emerald City Opera to Opera Steamboat. They now have a new executive director, Julie Makowski, and it's shifting a little bit in direction. Again, it's looking at how do we get a younger audience to engage with opera, which is not typically something that if you say opera, people are like, ooh, I don't like opera, right? Like my dad is that person, right? Dad, you want to come to the opera? I do not, no, right? Husband, same way. He went to one, he was like, I'm good. But she's now doing a lot more work with non-traditional and more modern operas, and those more tell a story. And when you can tell a story, you can engage more people in it, right? If it's an accessible story, if it's in English, say, as opposed to Latin or Italian, then you can really start to bring in a younger generation. A couple of years ago, they did the performance As One, which was about a transgender person, and that was, I think, is now the most performed or produced opera in the country. That was here in Steamboat Springs. Last year, they did an original commission called Welcome to the Madness, and that was the story of Perry Mansfield told through opera and story, and it traveled throughout the Perry Mansfield campus. It was phenomenal. They filmed it and they did a premiere of that this year. So that is available for people to see. But it's new ways of how do we engage a different type of person and how do we make sure this art form continues, which is pretty exciting. There's somebody else we should mention in this community when you're talking about impactful women in the arts, which is Betsy Grasby. Betsy Grasby, yeah, she is, my gosh, she is like a tornado of energy, and I don't know how she does it. She was one of the primary founders of Strings Music Pavilion. So a lot of people who know strings know the name Kate Claggett. She was really that face, but Betsy was really the force, right? And then you have John Sanambrogio, who spurred the whole idea of it. John Sanambrogio was a phenomenal cellist, right? Yes, thank you. Cellist. And he played in the Boston Symphony. He has graced our stages for many, many years in Steamboat Springs. He was also a visionary, and I am going to take just a brief moment to talk about a man, because we love our man. He really was a visionary. He started the first kind of all arts week. He was the one, the very first time we said we should bring together all the arts disciplines in a celebration. So what we're doing at Undiscovered Earth is nothing new. It's on the shoulders of what's come before us. So John, you have Betsy, and you have Kay. And they took this concert that started in a tent up at the base of the ski area, right?
No, it started at Storm Mountain.
Storm Mountain.
Storm Mountain.
Yeah,
it was really small.
Yes, very small, right? And it's now grown to having its own facility with year-round programming, which is pretty phenomenal. Betsy stepped away from that a while ago, but she wasn't content to retire, as most women are not who get in the arts, it gets in your blood. And she started the Steamboat Art Museum. Has anyone been to the Steamboat Art Museum? Many, many of us. If you have not, I highly recommend it. You're just a couple blocks down that way. It is free. They have national level exhibits that they bring here, right? Things that other communities like Jackson Hole can't get, Betsy is able to bring to our community. Their current exhibit is all around printmaking and Sue Omi. Sue Omi is a local to Steamboat Springs. She is one of the country's master printers. She is nationally known for her work, and she curated this exhibit of people that she's worked with throughout the years. It is such a bright and vibrant exhibit. One of the cool things that they've done with this exhibit as well is they have QR codes. You can click on the QR code with your phone and you can listen to the artists talk about what inspired their work. Betsy also pioneered something called the Painted Word. Did anyone go to that performance this week? Yes. The Painted Word it's called an ekphrastic event, but it's when you take a piece of art that inspires you to write something about it, a story or a poem. And so this is an ongoing competition. If you ever want to hear a lot of our phenomenal local writers, go to this event once a year. It's a way to bring the community together through different art forms. So that just happened this past week. But Betsy has really transformed that space from basically an empty building into a world-class art gallery, and we are so lucky to have Betsy Grasby in our community. And Betsy's mother, which I just pulled this off, said to her once, "Make it better because you are there." And that's something that she lives by, which I thought was such a beautiful quote. And she reflected a little bit in an old Steamboat Pilot article when she said, when they came out here, it was the 70s, and Stuart Hanwell from Picnic Theater said the same thing. There was nothing happening in the arts in the 70s here. Television was a little fuzzy, there was a couple of radio stations, a rundown movie theater, and that was it for the arts, right? And this group of women through the years have built it up where people come to Steamboat Springs today because of arts and culture. It's a reason they bring their children here to grow up within this community, and it's one of those amenities that they want on top of skiing and outdoor recreation. And it does say right in here, Steamboat Athletic Club at Storm Mountain. You guys are so good, I love it. Yes, exactly. And so Strings was started 1987 is when that effort to bring that music festival to life happened, which was pretty incredible. I'd love to mention also Dorothy Wither. So Dorothy Wither she had a dress shop, and I know this, and Katie and Candace shared this with me yesterday, which was so beautiful. She had a dress shop, and she used to kind of look at a woman and go, okay, I see what size you are, I see what style you are, and she would go out and find clothes that worked for them. And that in itself is a beautiful art form, right? Is how we dress ourselves and dress others. But she was the one who started the idea for a museum in our community. She knew a lot of the people here were kind of aging out. She didn't know how much longer they'd be around, and they started bringing her artifacts and things like that to remember their families from. And that's why we're all sitting in this room today at the Tread of Pioneers Museum, is thanks to Dorothy Wither, which we are so grateful to have had her. And to have the stewards of her and Candace and Katie and others that have come before them, that now, as Katie was saying yesterday, you know, she knows people that are related to other people that don't know they're related to other people in the community, and can say, oh my gosh, did you know this about your family history? Did you know you're related to this, or your family did this? So within arts, heritage is a big part of what we consider our art scene, and we have these beautiful stewards that bring that to life every day for us right here in the Tread of Pioneers Museum. It's also important to mention some of the people who have kept, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but Steamboat Creates, which is our creative district, right? There have been a few key women along the way that have really shaped that and kept that going. Nancy Kramer is one of those people. Kramer, as she likes to be called in the community, she was known for it's my way or the highway, right? And she really whipped people into shape, and she believed that all these arts organizations should be under one umbrella. Like, why aren't we all working together? And this is the way we need to do it. And I know she butted heads with quite a few people then, but as she was reflecting yesterday, those people are her good friends now. They're people that they've built these relationships with because she had a vision. She brought people together. She expanded the arts in our community. She was really, I mean, she knew when they had a new gallery exhibit who to call that would want to see that type of art. She knew the community that well, and she knew the arts that well. And she carried the Steamboat Springs Arts Council, now Steamboat Creates, on for many, many years. About 10 years ago, they got a new executive director, Kim Keith. So Kim Keith actually has an interesting background. She's a photographer. She used to do black and white nudes of women, where she would use shadow lights to highlight different parts of their body. And she was really well known for it. A lot of people wanted to be one of her subjects. And then she decided she wanted to do more for the community. So she got involved with the Steamboat Springs Arts Council at the time. She was an assistant there. When the executive director left, she thought, maybe I could do this job. And so she applied for the job, was awarded the job, and in her tenure here, she has taken it from just a small arts council. They used to have a kids' youth program that served about 40 kids a year. They now serve 600 children every summer with their arts programs. She has taken it from what was the Arts Council into a creative district. That's not a designation you just get from the state. You have to apply for it. The first year she applied for it, she brought all the artists in town, she brought the city in town, she brought everyone out to talk to the representatives, really built up our community, and they said, you know what, I don't think you're ready yet. I don't think your city is as involved as it needs to be in your art scene. And that's a constant battle in Steamboat, is really educating our city council as to why the arts are more than just a frivolous afterthought. They are a key part of our economy. So did she give up? She did not. The next year, she invited them back. She had a helicopter fly them in, land them over by Strings Music Pavilion. She toured them through our community and had each venue that we have activated with dance or with theater or with poetry. And through that, she was able to get the creative district designation. Not only that, most creative districts are like a walkable area. So say 3rd to 13th in your downtown. Steamboat Springs is a little different because we have Perry Mansfield outside of town, we have Strings outside of town. She was able to get them to bend the rules to have those as satellite locations included in our creative district. So the work that she's doing is really pushing us forward on a more national spotlight, which is really important for our community. So these are some of the key phenomenal women in this community. Why are the arts important, right? It is our heart, it is our soul, right? But the arts help shape a community. They create connection. It is very rare these days, especially with our youngest generations, that people sit in a room and actually focus on something other than a phone or a computer. When you go to a performance, right? When you go out to Perry Mansfield and you're sitting in the pavilion and you're looking at nature all around you this way, and you're looking at these dancers from across the country that are putting on performances that are breathtaking, you don't look at your phone. You are right there in a moment. And that's what the arts allow us to do, not just to be in a moment, but to be in a moment with other people and connect in a like-minded way. Laura Craig, who's the board chair of the Steamboat Symphony Orchestra, loves to cite this study that when you listen to music, your heart starts to beat at the same pace as the people around you. And you actually have a communal heartbeat at arts organizations. We know that doodling releases stress. We know that dancing releases endorphins and brings more joy to us. And we know that the arts as the whole have healing powers. They really, really do, and it's being medically studied all across the country and around the world, the impact that the arts have on happiness, on building community, and on our mental health. With our kids these days in a mental health crisis, and one of the women that I spoke to recently who works with young kids said it's actually beyond crisis now, we're in an epidemic with the amount of suicides and tragedies that we've got. Sorry. It's been, in this community, we have the power to bring arts to these kids and to change their lives. So I'm going to end on that note. Any questions? Happy ones. Yeah.
Well, this is just really a technique. How do you remember all of what you just said? Without like 100 cards or something.
I used to read it, but now I'll write it out. I'll read it through several times, and then I'll bullet point it and read it through a couple times, just so.
And I also wanted to point out that Kramer is
Yes.
also well known, I believe, for her cheesecakes.
Yes. I need to get her to make me some. I'm sad. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a comment, not a question. Certainly Danny McKinley should be on the list of
Yes.
women very significant to the arts in Steamboat Springs.
True.
Yes.
Well, she took my comment because that's what I was going to say. But I also wanted you to just tell us a little bit more about Undiscovered Earth and how long that's been around. And I know it's just one of your many sort of creations.
Thank you. So Undiscovered Earth is a nonprofit that formed in 2022 as a way to fill in the gaps between what was being offered in the community and what was still needed in the community. Even with so many arts organizations, there were certain programs that weren't being fulfilled. One of those visions is to bring a performing arts center to Steamboat Springs. It has been a 20-year conversation as to how do we actually make this happen. And so we thought, how do we start to get into that space? We know for opera, to have a full opera with a symphony, you need an orchestra pit, you need fly space, you need wings. We don't have any spaces in the community that fit that full need at this point. So one of our goals by taking over Wild Horse Cinema and Arts, which is our movie theater downtown, we're starting to program that with different performing arts, with music, comedy, and things like that. But the end goal is to turn that into a 500-seat performing arts center that also has rehearsal space, office space, and becomes a hub of collaboration and community. One of our other programs is Prescription for the Arts. So we actually work with mental health professionals in the community. It's called social prescribing, and it's the first of its kind of this program in Colorado. It's a program that happens all around the world, but doctors can prescribe arts experiences like they would a pill. So if a youth goes in struggling with isolation, depression, or anxiety, their doctor can say, okay, you can have 6 guitar lessons, and we plug them into those artists. We set up the arts experience for them, we pay for their teachers, we pay for their transportation, and we make sure they have a healthy snack. That has grown. We partner with Northwest Colorado Health to grow that program out, so we are now serving that through the schools. We partner with Nampa Valley High School, and that's become part of their curriculum, is these arts experiences with us for their students. The next phase of it is working with Kaiser Permanente and Ann Schutz's Choral Lab, which is a creativity arts resiliency lab, to build out an app so that anywhere, anyone, anywhere can go on an app, type in how they're feeling, have an arts experience, measure how they're feeling, and then connect it in with a mental health professional if they need additional support. So that's coming down the pipeline. We're super excited about that. And then we do All Arts Week. So that is that week where we say, my gosh, we have so much happening in this community, people really need to know about it. So that's a little bit about what Undiscovered Earth does. Ashley. Yes.
This is, you had a wealth of information, so thank you. Dorothy Wither also helped start, or get the pool working as a community. And her father or her grandfather were pioneers here as well.
Yes.
They started out in Hunts Peak and then moved to Steamboat.
Awesome.
So that's part of the pioneer background.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the talk. And I have a question, I hope I can ask it well. Colorado Mountain College is a big part of the community, and I was wondering, what could they do to complement these programs?
That's a great question. The question was, what can Colorado Mountain College do to help complement the arts program since they're such a big part of our community? One
Also
interest-
started by a woman.
Right? And it was started by, Colorado Mountain College was started by Lucy Bogue, or Lucille Bogue, and you'll see the Lucille Bogue name up at CMC. She was a camper at Perry Mansfield, and when she decided to start the university, the concept was, how do we get minds from all around the world together in kind of a think tank? That's how Colorado Mountain College first started. It's then since become part of the CMC brand. How do we get them to collaborate? We are collaborating on smaller levels. We just did a rodeo series with them. They're gonna start offering different movie series as programs where they have a talk back about what the film is about, why it's about, and the different artistic disciplines that are happening with that. We just did a rodeo series. So we did a rodeo from all sides, which included Black Rodeo, which is the name of a documentary about a rodeo in Harlem, Native American perspective on rodeo, the white man's perspective, and then the last film was Sweethearts of the Prison Rodeo, about rodeo in women's prisons. So they're pioneering a lot of interesting arts program. A lot of their arts programs take place in different parts of their campuses. Glenwood Springs has a pretty robust photography program, theater program, and we are working to try and get more of that here. And Edith, who's sitting right here in the front, has been a longtime teacher. She was my first writing teacher in this community, and she was the one who made me say, I am a writer. Other questions, yes?
Could you elaborate on what's happening with the movie theater downtown?
Yes, so the Chief Theater has been shuttered since I think 2019. It was shuttered because the owners at that time really felt like it's COVID, nobody's coming through, perfect time to shut down the building, we'll just do a super quick renovation, we'll open it up as this big performing arts center and everything's gonna be great. Well, it was COVID. They were looking for investors. There were not investors at that time to help rebuild it, so they kind of sat on it. Undiscovered Earth for a while tried to raise funds to purchase the building. The cost of it with a renovation of what we needed would have been about 11 million, and we would have had no way to have income coming in as we were raising and building that building out, so we decided to pass on it. It has recently been purchased by a local young man who is fourth generation ranching family in Steamboat Springs. I think I'm allowed to say now, I think it's public knowledge, Trace Adams is the family. Their vision is very similar to what the other group was, which is a 500-seat music venue. So a lot of standing room. You've had about 350 people standing room only. You would have a balcony tier and then a rooftop deck and restaurant. So that's the goal. They've been through planning. They have things in, things are moving forward, just it's Steamboat, so we all know it takes a little bit longer than we would hope, but that's the goal, is to have a really professional music venue downtown.
And do they have a timeline with that dream?
I believe the timeline was this summer, so a little behind the ball. I think it's probably gonna be another couple years. It's gonna be the same vision where you're gutting it from the front wall back. So when the previous owners had it, they did some demo work on the floors and in the walls, so it's not a space that you can just open and start activating right away. It actually needs quite a bit of work before you can even reopen it. So I would probably guess 2 years maybe.
And it's in the process right now?
It's in the planning process, yeah.
Oh, planning, okay.
They've been through historic preservation planning, so they know what they need to do to bring the facade back to the old historic look. And Katie, you've been part of those conversations too, right? Yeah. Does that all feel accurate with?
Yes, but hasn't been approved by any means.
Right, it's in planning.
It was in concept phase, so we're waiting for them to
Yeah, get improved.
get actual plans together.
But the building has been purchased.
Correct, that's my understanding, yes. Yeah.
Do you know if the Indian themed murals are still on the walls?
They are, yes.
Are they?
Yeah.
Under whatever's there?
Exactly, yeah. So when they did the demo, they pulled out a part of it, and you can see quite a bit of those murals
Yeah,
still.
'cause
And
they used to be very notable.
yes, so the murals on the walls are super fascinating, right? I believe under Chief Harry Gordon, who was one of the first owners that really transformed it into a community space, it used to be 500 seats, 2 levels. So as we're talking about this transformation, it's not that far from what it originally was in the community. He had murals on the walls of Routt County. And when the next owner took over, they said it doesn't really fit with the theme of the chief, which is the name of the building. And so they painted these Native American murals over that. It is believed that those original murals are still under, and you might be able to scrape off some of that paint and get to it. It would be a very costly process. Likely in the next iteration, they will just put a wall over it. So they won't destroy it, but they'll put a wall over it so that they don't have to worry about the preservation of those pieces. Any other questions? Yeah, Joe.
I've read about Perry Mansfield, where that's one of my passions, and I know they had a fire and destroyed some of the historical records. And just last week, I was at a lady's house in her 80s, and she had attended Perry Mansfield. And it seemed like, well, my passion would be to do a beneficial fundraiser for something like that, and to be able to, is there an effort in, I guess the question, in bringing those that attended Perry Mansfield? I mean, we know Judy Garland and Dustin Hoffman, but if they could be part of an alumni that became something they could support, including myself, it's something people would like to do. The woman said, I went to Perry Mansfield, and she was very dignified, and she'd been something out in New York, I forget what you called them, but it was debutante.
Yes.
So how, is there anything in the process of being able to restore the alumni of Perry Mansfield and bring that to their best interest?
That's so good.
Great question. So I think it's 2 years ago now, under Joe Haynes, they started the very first Hall of Fame, which was exactly that. How do we start recognizing the alumni, bring people back to Perry Mansfield, reignite that love, and then have that story start to share further and further. So that happened for the first year. We had a really successful year. Carolyn and Noelle were honored in that, as well as Charlotte and Portia and Marjorie, Rusty DeLucia, Elizabeth Shannon. Who am I missing in that group?
Lucy Vogt.
And Lucy Vogue, yes, exactly. That did pause as they've been through transitions of several executive directors. Once they're on solid footing again, I believe that's going to continue, because that is how that organization is going to continue to thrive, is once the alumni are re-engaged in it. So it's a great point, yeah. Yeah, so steps have been made, they've just been a little disrupted, but they'll get back on track. Other questions? Yes?
This is somewhat unrelated, but what's the status of art programs in our local schools at this point? When you talk about the kids and how important art is, and we hear about how the arts are being cut in schools.
I'm not sure what the arts programs are within the schools. I can talk a little bit about what Northwest Colorado Health is doing, and then a more statewide movement on that. So Northwest Colorado Health has a program that reaches all the schools, where they bring in different arts instruments. They don't do arts teaching, but for example, they would bring in, say, a guitar or a ukulele, and they would just put it down and let kids pick it up and start to play however they want to engage with it. They do that with the visual arts too. They're now plugging into our programming, so for kids who have needs where they need more arts experiences, if they're struggling with something, they can then get one-on-one support, where they can have one-on-one lessons in any type of arts discipline. On a statewide level, they are trying to have it written into law that you can have, that there would be an arts curriculum for which you would get a diploma. And that diploma would then let you move on to higher education within the arts with some sort of a more serious background. So there are these different pieces happening at the state level to really protect the arts in our school and for our youth. We know that in rural communities, once funding's cut, that's the arts are the first thing to go. So these supporting organizations are really picking that up. Steamboat Creates does that beautifully in the summer with their arts programs, and they also do after-school programs. Another thing to note is that with the Boys and Girls Club in town, a lot of the arts organizations are now working with them. So Opera Steamboat, Picnic Theater, Steamboat Dance Theater, Colorado New Play Festival, and now our Prescription for the Arts program are all in the Boys and Girls Club throughout the year with different arts experiences for their students.
Including free violin lessons.
Yes, exactly.
And the Colorado Crane Conservation Coalition offers a variety of arts contests each year in conjunction with our big festival over Labor Day. And they have various levels of high school age, junior high age, grade school age art contests, and it includes paintings, includes whatever medium they want to work in, and art for, 3D art of various kinds. And we also include the Moffat County schools in contests like that. So
Yes.
it's not unusual for arts organizations in the community to pick up some slack where the schools need to catch up. And, they've got all the same funding constraints we have. And, my kid can't spell, why should he learn how to paint? There's so many challenges facing the school districts, but they certainly know how much better all kids do. Arts exposure.
And I will say, this year was the first year with the Colorado Crane Conservation Coalition Arts Contest. The kids did songs. There were 2 youth that recorded their own music. So not only wrote the lyrics, original lyrics, but then created the music and recorded it, which was really cool. Yes.
Can I tell you about a program in Austin that I think is just phenomenal, where one person started something called Sound Waves, and what it's grown humongously. It has lots of money, and what they've done is to provide every child with an instrument that wants to learn to play an instrument in AISD, and then the teacher that would come and teach that child how to use that instrument. And they can have the instrument all the way through high school, but they have to leave the instrument so it can be given to somebody.
Wow.
What's AISD?
AI, Austin Independent School District.
Yeah, thank you for that, that's amazing. And I know Steamboat Symphony Orchestra offers their Strings Sprouts program.
Yeah.
So they have free programming for youth, and I believe it's 3 to 5 years that they get consistent programming and they get their own instrument. So it's pioneering here as well, yeah. Anyone else have questions? Yes, Joe?
One last point, the program you talked about started by Portia and Shannon. Shannon was my equestrian teacher, well, professional. Their program is starting today at Routt County Fair in Hayden. And I was just getting a text, one of ours is doing her first event, but they do the Eastern Riding and the Western Pleasure, and it starts today. And then the Routt County Fair goes all week through the weekend, so.
And they have a beautiful art exhibit out at the Routt County Fair as well. They have quilting, they have floral art, they have visual arts. I mean, so it's that art and outdoor experience that we've got going on. Yeah. Yes?
I wanted to hear a little bit of that plan for the Performing Arts Center at the Wildhorse. Does that include keeping movie theaters, or would it just be a Performing Arts Center?
Great question. So that was about the renovations at Wildhorse. Would it include keeping movies or not? Absolutely. So one of the things we found, which is super interesting, is that movies is that access point that anyone feels comfortable in coming into as far as arts experiences, right? We have people from all walks of the community that I don't see elsewhere within arts experiences that come to movies, so it's a critical part of what we offer. So the bigger vision is 2 of our kind of smaller movie theaters, because movies aren't as well attended as they used to be, and then the larger space would have a huge movie screen. So we can do first-run films, we can do indie films, foreign films, but we would definitely keep that as part of the plan. Yes. Well, thank you all so much for being here. You are an amazing audience. Really appreciate it.